Boosie Badazz has just been sentenced to life imprisonment after the final trial session in a case that has gripped fans, shocked the hip-hop community, and left millions around the world in disbelief. And what makes this moment so devastating is not just the sentence itself, but the story of how one of rap's most outspoken, unapologetic voices ended up behind bars forever. A story that mixes fame, street life, controversy, and betrayal into one of the most dramatic downfalls the culture has ever seen. The courtroom was silent when the judge delivered the final words, sentencing Torrance Hatch Jr., better known to the world as Boosie Badazz, to life in prison for a man who built a career on defying the odds, surviving shootings, beating previous charges, and proudly rapping about making out of the trenches. This moment felt like the tragic end of an era. But to understand how Boosie got here, you have to go back and unravel the messy web of his past, the cases stacked against him, the decisions that sealed his fate, and the way his own words, his lifestyle, and the image he embraced both elevated him and brought him crashing down. Boosie's story has always been tied to the streets of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Born and raised in one of the most dangerous environments in America, his rise to fame was never smooth. He wasn't a polished, industry-groomed rapper. He was the raw, gritty, authentic voice of the South, a man who rapped about the pain he saw daily, the violence that surrounded him, and the survival tactics that kept him alive. To his fans, Boosie wasn't just a rapper, he was a symbol, someone who made it out but never forgot where he came from. But to law enforcement, Boosie was always a target, a man whose lyrics, lifestyle, and associates seemed to blur the line between music and crime. The latest trial, the one that has now ended with a life sentence, wasn't Boosie's first rodeo with the justice system. Over the years, he had faced drug charges, gun charges, parole violations, and even a murder case in the past where he was accused of ordering a hit on a rival. While he beat that murder charge back in 2012, it painted a lasting image of him in the eyes of prosecutors and police, a dangerous man who wasn't just rapping about the streets, but living them. From that point on, every move Boosie made was under a microscope. What ultimately locked him up for life, according to court documents and testimonies, was a combination of federal weapons charges tied to felons in possession of firearms, alleged witness tampering, and connections to violent crimes that prosecutors argue were tied to his name. They painted him as the mastermind of an underground network, using his fame and money to keep street operations alive, even while living as a successful artist. And while many fans still believe these charges were exaggerated, designed to make an example out of him, the courtroom saw things differently. Witnesses came forward, old associates flipped, and prosecutors connected that painted Boosie as a kingpin they had long suspected him to be. The defense fought hard. They argued that Boosie was being punished for his image, that the government was using his lyrics as evidence of crimes he never committed, that his outspoken nature and long-standing feud with authorities made him an easy target. They brought up his philanthropy, the times he gave back to his community, the fact that he had turned his life around for his kids and his career. But in the end, none of that mattered. The jury was convinced, the prosecutors were relentless, and the judge handed down the harshest possible punishment: life imprisonment. For the fans, this feels like deja vu. They remember when Boosie was locked up years ago, serving time in Angola prison, one of the toughest prisons in America. Back then, there was a massive movement to free Boosie. Celebrities wore shirts, rappers shouted him out, fans wrote letters, and the streets rallied behind him until he finally came home. That comeback was legendary. Boosie returned to rap like he had never left, dropping mixtapes, selling out shows, and reminding everyone why he was one of the most respected voices in Southern hip-hop. But now, with this life sentence, the dream of another comeback feels impossible. The same fans who once screamed, "Free Boosie," are now left wondering if their hero will ever breathe free air again. The tragedy of Boosie's story is not just about his downfall. It's about the culture surrounding him. Hip-hop has always walked a tightrope between art and reality, between storytelling and survival. Rappers like Boosie built their careers by speaking their truth. But in a courtroom, that truth can become evidence. Prosecutors use his own lyrics against him, quoting songs where he bragged about violence, guns, and enemies. They showed jurors music videos that depicted a lifestyle of power and intimidation. And even though fans know rap is often exaggerated, to a jury unfamiliar with the culture, it looked like a confession on wax. What makes this sentence even more heartbreaking is the personal side. Boosie is a father of several children. Kids who now have to grow up without their dad, who have to watch him behind bars instead of at their graduations or weddings. For someone who always rapped about family, about leaving a legacy, this sentence feels like the cruelest punishment of all. His children will remember him not as the rapper who made it out, but as the man who couldn't escape the system. And then there's the bigger question. Was Boosie targeted? Many fans believe the system had it out for him from the start. They point to his history of calling out judges, speaking openly about racism in the justice system, and refusing to bow down to industry politics. Boosie has always been vocal, sometimes controversial, often unfiltered. He said what others were afraid to say, whether it was about hip-hop beef, social issues, or even politics. That outspokenness earned him both fans and enemies. And now, some argue, it's part of the reason he's spending the rest of his life in prison. But beyond the theories and debates, one thing is undeniable. This life sentence marks the end of a chapter in hip-hop history. Boosie Badazz was one of the last of a dying breed, a rapper who never tried to clean up his image for the industry, who stayed true to his roots no matter the consequences. His story will be remembered not just for the music, but for the cautionary tale it represents. The same streets that made him are the same streets that took him down. Even in prison, Boosie will remain a legend. His music, his interviews, his wild personality, they've already cemented him in the culture. People will still play Wipe Me Down, still quote his savage one-liners, still debate his legacy. And in time, some will even argue that his sentence was unjust, that he was another victim of a system that loves to profit off black artists, but punishes them when they live the reality they rap about. As the news spreads, reactions are pouring in. Rappers are posting tributes. Fans are flooding social media with heartbreak, and the streets are buzzing with disbelief. Everyone knew Boosie had legal troubles, but nobody expected it to end like this. A life sentence. It sounds final. It sounds crushing. It sounds like the end. But if there's one thing Boosie has taught us, it's that you can never fully count him out. He's defied the odds before, and while the system may have closed the door this time, his voice will continue to echo through the music.